Do we have similar tastes in books? Let's find out. Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. I am Leah, and I've had a lot of followers over the past couple of months. A lot of you have asked me for book recommendations, and I always give warnings that like my taste may not be the same as your taste. And I think it's so important for all of us to develop our personal taste, our personal style, right? Not every book out there is for you, and that is fine. That doesn't mean it's a bad book. So I did want to make this video so that we're all on the same page as to what kind of books I enjoy and what I look for in books. So this is a very fun tag. One of the people that I follow, Mari, she started this. So I'm going to tag her and the other creator in the description below. And I'm super excited to talk about what kind of books I enjoy and what I look for in books. How do you rate books? Give a quick rundown of how you do your star ratings, or if you don't use star ratings, how do you evaluate books? I do use star ratings. I use Storygraph. So Storygraph does it like every quarter star. Because I mainly read books by Black authors, I am like trying to combat systemic racism. I know me by myself can't do that. And I know how prevalent it is for Black authors to get review bombed simply for being Black and writing about Black characters. And if you do not believe me, go look at their 1 stars. It'll be like, this memoir that this Black woman wrote talked about her being a Black woman. I'm like, it's a memoir, babe. What else is she supposed to talk about? What? Like, no, it is very bad. So for me, when I rate a book, I used to not go below a 4 star, and that was me kind of counteracting all those 1 star reviews. Because again, I don't believe that there are any bad books. I do believe that there are books that are not well for me. So I used to not go below a 4 star until I started reading more indie books. And I'm like, these people have very small teams and or they're doing it all by themselves, and they're comparable to books that have an entire team of people helping them. I was like, I don't think it's fair to rate them on the same scale. And so I kind of lowered my scale to, for traditionally published books, I will rate the lowest a 3.5. And then for indie books, it's usually starts at the lowest is a 4. So my rating scale, let's start with the Trad Pub rating scale. A 3.5 star is a book that is like okay, but for me, a lot of times it's like the ending did not fulfill the premise of the story, and so I'm very disappointed in it. But it doesn't mean it's a bad book, right? I'm just disappointed in it. So I give it a 3.5 star. And that's usually a 3.75 would be about the same. A 4 star is a book that I was like the whole time, just meh, the whole time. So a 4.25 is like a meh, but like I had more things that I enjoyed about it, right? A 4.5 star is a book that I'm like, okay. Like I wouldn't say it's either good or bad. I'm very neutral about it. And I think that the book has a lot of merits. So I give it a 4.5 star. A 4.75 star is a book that I think is really, really great. There may be like 1 or 2 things that I have a really big problem with, but I think it's an amazing, incredible book and everyone should read it. And then a 5 star book is a book I'm feral for. I'm absolutely feral for that book. I think it is the best literature that has ever dropped on the face of this planet. I think it's amazing. And that's a 5 star read for me. How do you approach reviewing books? What's your review style? Are you analytical, emotional, casual, or structured? So I actually started reviewing books for like money in like 2021. And a lot of the things that this woman told me when I was reviewing the books was really focused on the strengths of the story and not so much focus on the weaknesses. And a lot of why we do that is because like I said, I don't believe that there are bad books. I believe every book has its audience, right? And what you may think is a bad book is really just a book that is not for you. Doesn't mean the book is bad. It's just not for you. And that's okay. Not every book is for you, right? And so when I review books, a lot of it is focusing on the strengths, focusing on the things that people may like and may enjoy about it, and be like, this book is actually for these kinds of people. If you're not those kinds of people, don't read the book. It's not for you. You're not going to have a good time. And so when I'm reviewing the book, I mainly focus on, I look at the plot, And then I look at the promises of the plot. Did it execute it well? What are the strengths? Sometimes if I feel like a book has a lot of weaknesses, I will talk about the weaknesses of that book, but I really try to focus on what are the things that it does well? What are the things that could attract somebody? At the same time, what are the things that could detract somebody from this book? Like there was this one book I reviewed and I was like, it's written in the voice of Holden Caulfield. What is that man's name? Holden? From The Catcher in the Rye. It's written in his voice. And so he has a very strong voice. A lot of people, me, don't like that voice. And so I did that review because I was like, this will be very helpful for people who like that voice, can be like, oh yeah, this is the book for me. People who don't like that voice be like, this is not the book for me. And so that's kind of how I review, trying to point out the things that people could either be like, this is for me or this is not for me. What's the book that made you a reader? Whether it was your first favorite or the one that got you hooked, what book started it all? I would say maybe Berenstain Bears. That is like one of the earliest series that I remember reading. And I don't know, it was just this like cute family who were all together in this house. I don't know what it was about the Berenstain Bears. It was just cutesy. I enjoyed it. It was actually my first chapter book that I actually read. I went from the Berenstain Bears picture books to the chapter books. And that was in first grade. So here's the thing. It's hard to talk about being an early reader without talking about all the bad things that happen. So I was an advanced reader from very young age. As soon as I learned how to read, I was like, had my head in a book. I was devouring books. And so my teacher was kind of being like, you can slow down. You don't have to read this many books a week. And when we would go to the library to get books, she would be like, are you sure you want to read that many? She was very cautious about it. And it wasn't until I was older that she told me, what was going on. And she was like, I really wanted to protect your love of reading. I didn't want you to burn out with reading. I did eventually burn out with reading, but she was like, I didn't want you to burn out with reading. And then she also told me about this other teacher who had saw that like we did AR, so accelerated reading, where you take tests on the books that you read, and saw that I was the highest by a lot. And so she got her highest reader and was forcing her to like read all of these books so that way she can beat me. And you want to know why? Because I was Black and I was not supposed to be the best reader in my grade. That's literally what my former teacher told me. Yeah. And so she was like, well, you actually won because she had to be forced to be the top reader and you didn't. But I was like, but I was still second. And I was still very upset because I think first place got a TV for a prize. And I got this like disco lights. And I was like, I want the TV. I was so upset. And then to find that out later, like I didn't get it because of racism, I was like, I can't win. I can't win. So it's always bittersweet to talk about like my first reading experiences because they're tainted by racism. Do you have a genre niche? Are there certain genres you gravitate towards, or do you read widely across genres? I am a pretty open reader. Like, as long as the story sounds interesting, I'm down. I'm okay with a lot of things. Like, I don't really need trigger and content warnings. I'm like, it usually people tell you who they are in the first few chapters. I remember the first time I read Parable of the Sower, everyone was like, you gotta read it. You gotta read it. It's so important. First chapter, decapitation, blood everywhere, rape, violence. I'm like, okay, this is the kind of book we going into. Got it. Got it. So like for me, I think a really great writer is able to attract or detract, their readers within the first few chapters. So I tend to read widely. I would say my top genres as of late is like romance, young adult, fantasy. Those are probably my top genres. Contemporary kind of in there as well. But I read everything. Actually, this year I've mainly been reading young adult fantasy. I have not been reading much romance, and that's because I'm currently writing romance, and I don't like to write and read within the same genre. I read everything. I'm not really turned off by anything. Within a given year, I've read at least 24 different genres. So, do you generally prefer character-driven or plot-driven stories? Character-driven, absolutely. I love character work. I love writing character work. I love reading character work. I love when the characters feel real to me, when I can get invested in their lives and in their stories. Like, I love that shit. That is my favorite thing on the planet. So yes, I love a character-driven story. I do enjoy plot-driven stories. Sometimes they can be a bit boring to me because I think when you have a character-driven story, you get attached to the characters, right? They can do whatever. And I'm like, I'm here for the ride because I like you. Sometimes I don't like the main character, right? I hate them. And I'm here for the ride because I'm praying for their downfall. So yeah, those are usually the two things. The two things I look for in a character driven story. I love a character that even if I don't actually like them, I can relate to them and I can, or at least I can understand where they're coming from. And a character that I hate, that I'm praying for their downfall, yeah. What's a book you love so much that you don't care if others don't like it? What's the one book you love enough for everyone? I feel like a lot of books that I love and that I'm feral for, a lot of other people are too, because I think we all agree that it's like great storytelling. But I would say the one book that I don't think enough people know about is How Moon Fuentes Fell in Love with the Universe. This was my introduction to Raquel Vasquez Gilliland. And ever since that, I've loved almost everything she's written. I did not enjoy Cia Martinez in the moonlit beginning of everything. Yeah, I didn't really enjoy that. It felt like a duller version of this. This is very bright, it's very voicey, right? It deals with a lot of difficult things. And at the heart of it, it's about romance and belonging and acceptance. Like, I love a genre turducken. I love when a book is doing like multiple things at one time and it does it well. And I think RBG really did this here. This is one of my favorite books by her. I do really like her new series with the Flores sisters. I'm excited for Sky's story. Hopefully that comes out this year. But yeah, this is the book that I love enough for all of us. And I think everyone should read this. What's a book you love so much that if someone doesn't like it, you know your reading tastes don't align? The book or books where a difference of opinion is a strong indicator of different reading preferences. Legendborn. That's it. Like, I think Legendborn is so beautiful. I think it's so well done. I do understand, and this is why I always give this disclaimer, because I used to recommend that. Like, every Black person was like, what's the best Black book you read? And I would be like, Legendborn, Legendborn, Legendborn. And then they would be like, I couldn't finish it. It was too triggering. It was too much racism. I was like, oh. So I was trying to be more careful, but like, for me, I've been in those kind of environments. They are still like, they can still be a lot for me, but like, there's so much other things that are going on in Legendborn that I'm just like, this is the book for me. This is the book for me. This is the series for me. I just think it's so beautiful. It is so perfect. I do agree it could be a little less white. But for me, I was just like, oh, white person, white person. I didn't know who them folks was. I'm gonna be honest, because she had like 15 different people, and I'm like, I'm supposed to keep these folks straight. I don't know who these folks are. And then when the twist happened at the end of Legendborn, I'm like, I don't know who that man is anyway. So it was a lot for me, but I just think it's a really great series. I just love it so much. I love it so much. I wish everybody loved it, but I understand people have different tastes. Oh, it's just such a good book. It's a really good book. What's in your trash pocket? What books, tropes, or themes that you know are bad, but you love them anyway? I'm not really ashamed of any of my reading. And I guess this isn't about shame, but it's like, what do I think is trash, but I enjoy anyway? I really enjoy the sex tutor trope, but like, I'm not ashamed of enjoying erotic romance, right? And I guess the problem with the sex tutor trope is that it's usually a man who is sexually more experienced than a woman teaching that woman how to have sex, right? Teaching her about pleasure, teaching her about desire. And, I guess it could be said that it's like a power imbalance there, but at the same time, I just really enjoy it. And I think a lot of times it's usually two people who are having to learn about each other. I guess you could say it like reinforces gender roles and this idea that men are supposed to be more sexually experienced and women are supposed to be more sexually inexperienced, and men are supposed to be teaching women about sex and things like that. But I don't know, I just really love that trope. I think it's very cutesy. I guess that's the only like quote unquote problematic trope that I enjoy and that I look for, but I don't care. Do you have any deal breakers in books? Something that, if present, immediately turns you off from a book? I'm going to say no, I don't really have deal breakers. Sometimes it's just like if I'm reading a book and I don't care how it ends, I just quit reading. Oh, you know what I would say is the deal breaker? Okay, I think a deal breaker for me is purple prose. I think a deal breaker for me is purple prose because when I open a page, and I'm like, I don't even know what these words mean. I don't even know what's going on. What is this? Is this a sentence? How, what? And every single sentence is like that. I'm like, girl, I don't know what's going on. And do I like flowery language? Absolutely. I know a lot of people hate when they're like, he hisses, she purrs. I'm like, I love that shit. I love that. Or when they talk about like the body in a, I can't think of a really good example right now. But purple prose to me, I think, is when every sentence it gets out of being playful and turns to pretentious. And when I read that, I'm just like, I'm done. I don't know. This is advanced reading for me. I don't know what's going on. So, what's a strong opinion you have about a book released within the last year, whether it's overrated, underrated, or just a take you need to share? I don't know if I have a strong opinion about books released within the last year, like any of the books that I've read within the last year. I will say that I did DNF a lot more new releases because to me they just weren't interesting and fun. They were kind of boring, they were kind of stale, and so I just didn't finish them. And there were quite a few. Most of my DNFs last year were 2024 releases. So maybe that's a strong opinion. What do you look for in writing? What makes a book stand out to you? Is it prose, style, themes, voice, structure, or something else? I'm an author. I worked as a writing educator. I also worked as an editor. And I think all of those things together, like mix in my mind, like with each of those, you tend to look at writing from different perspectives. And I think it does help my writing in a lot of ways. So when I read other people's writing, what I'm really looking for is invisible writing, right? I don't want to be reminded that these are words that can and need to be changed. What I mean by that is, so my friend, she does crochet. She made that pillow for me. And when she made that pillow for me, she was like, this stitch is bad and that stitch is bad. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. It looks like a cactus pillow to me. You did a good job. I don't know what's going on. And so when I read a book, a lot of times I look at that book the way that she looks at this pillow and be like, oh, the stitching, this right here. And like if I can see the seams of that, I get very frustrated with that book because I'm like, oh, they could have did this. And you know what? As a matter of fact, they could have also did this. And they could also went this way with the story. And in addition to that, they could have went over here as well. And so my brain is always like, ugh, how do we make this better? And if you can distract me from that, I think it's a good story. Like if I'm so immersed in the storytelling that I forget these are words on the page that can be changed, amazing, beautiful. Some things that really stand out to me are voice. I think my favorite books are in first person, and they are a range of genres, right? I read literary fiction in first person present, which people are like, you're not supposed to do that. But people that are talented writers can do it, like Jesmyn Ward in Salvage the Bones. I think that is an elite book. It is amazing, it is stellar. But a lot of what I look for is simple prose that's also playful, right? And I love when writers can play with language without being pretentious. That is my favorite thing. I don't think you need to throw a thesaurus at a book to tell an interesting story, right? And so I love when authors are able to use language, be playful with it, be straightforward, and still tell a beautiful, amazing, engaging story. I actually think that those are the most impactful stories right? Because people can read it. It's more accessible to a lot of people. And we do live in the United States where most people do not read at a sixth grade level. And so it is also like community work that you're doing to try to make sure that people who may not be as literate can still understand your work. Like there's so much that goes into making your writing accessible. That doesn't mean it's plain and boring, right? It could still be engaging, it can still be interesting, it can still be very beautiful. And I think a lot of writers are stuck in that I need to write writerly. And I'll use an example for me. When I was writing Apocalypse Still, I had some writers give me feedback that it read like YA, which tends to be, I don't want to say a slur, but it's not a nice thing to say. It's a way of saying your writing is very straightforward and simple, right? But when that book went to market, people are like, this is literary fiction, which is considered advanced reading. I think a lot of that misconnect comes from like our idea of what a sixth grade reading level is. Like for me, when I was in sixth grade, I was reading literary fiction, I was reading memoir. That was what we read in our advanced classes. But that's not what other sixth graders were reading. So it's like, that's why I think, oh, sixth grade level, it's that my sixth grade level is not the average American sixth grade level. How do you decide what to read next? Do you plan ahead, mood read, or follow external factors, hype, recommendations, arcs? I've kind of calmed down on the reading recs, mainly because people are not giving me good recs, and that's fine. Just because I get along with people doesn't mean that we have similar tastes in the literature that we read. And so they would give me reading recs, and I'm like, this not for me. This not for me. So I kind of calmed down on that. Like right now, what I'm reading next is Ocean Vuong's On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. And I'm reading it because I saw an Instagram of him talking, and I love the cadence of his voice. I'm like, I'm gonna read his work. And it had like a 2-month wait at the library. So I'm like, a lot of other people want to read his work as well. So that's what I'm reading next. I do have a list of authors whose work I have previously enjoyed, and I want to read all of their books to see, do I really enjoy this author's work, or do I just enjoy the work that I've read? So right now in my Libby, I actually have lists of books that I've seen over the years. I've seen other people read and review, and I have them there. So like if I'm ever interested in those things, I'll check them out. But most of the time, I get reading recs from the authors themselves who are talking about their books or talking about something else that I enjoy. Like Raquel Vasquez Gilliland, how I found her was I was reading this article that she wrote about BIPOC magic systems, and how like white people often be like, you need to explain your magic system. But she's like, I can, right? The explanation for my magic system was destroyed with colonization. So I can't explain these things because I don't have the people there to explain it, because they were taken from me because of colonization. And I'm like, she's a girl that gets it. She's a girl that gets it. And so that's when I started reading her writing, and I'm like, she's a girl that gets it. She really is. And so yeah, that's usually where I get my reading recs now, straight from the authors themselves. But a lot of how I decide my next read, it does depend on my mood. It's like, what am I in the mood for? What am I doing? Like I said earlier, if I'm currently writing, I try not to read in that genre. So I'm like, what am I in the mood for? What's available at the library? That's also a really big one. Sometimes I'm in the mood for something, and then I have to wait 2 months. And then by the time 2 months is up and the book's ready, I'm like, I don't want the book anymore. Not in the mood for the book anymore. So, where do you get inspiration for your BookTube content? What sparks your video ideas? Other creators, trends, personal reading experiences? I started doing book content specifically with my Book Talk Has a Problem, but it's not smut. And that idea came from looking at other creators and seeing like, oh, what videos are they performing well? And everybody's talking about book talk. So I was like, let me hop on and talk about book talk too. And that is my second most viewed video. A lot of you may have actually come to my channel and subscribed from that video. I've been doing book commentary, and it's something that I am very passionate about, especially as someone who has been through trad pub and indie publishing, who has been through those systems and have seen the injustices, especially towards Black authors specifically. So like a lot of people are not aware of that because they have not been through those sorts of things. So yeah, I am very passionate about talking about them, because a lot of you just don't know how terrible it is on the side, and you think like being an author is a glamorous life and you think that it's a meritocracy, the best books are being published, you think a lot of the things, and that's simply not true. But I will say this, like, the trouble I have with doing book commentary is that when I do a video and I want it to be really well done, it takes a lot out of me and it's very draining, and it's not something that I want to do every week. So I have been trying to do more low effort book content where I get to just talk about books and talk about my feelings, talk about my thoughts, talk about my reactions, and just kind of add that to the conversation because I really love talking about books. I can go on and on and on. It is a topic that I can just spend an hour straight just talking about books, talking about themes, talking about all the things that are going on. But yeah, I do want to balance my content between commentary and actual like book reviews and book thoughts and not just do solely book commentary. If you could make any book go viral right now, what would it be? A book you think deserves more attention and why? As an author, I'm obviously going to say my book About the Boy. I think it deserves more attention. I think it's a beautiful book. It's beautiful, it's amazing, it's fun, it's, I wouldn't say lively, because the main character, she does cry a lot, but I think it's a really good read. And so I'm not going to tell you why I think it's a good read. I'm actually going to read a review for you from somebody else who I do not know, a stranger on the internet who took a chance on my book, who read it, and she really liked it. So Grace says, I don't usually leave reviews, but I know that even one review can mean a lot for self-published books. This took me a bit to get in because it's been a while since I've read a book with a high school protagonist, but I really liked it. I could tell the author put a lot of themselves into it, and I love any story that has a lot of things that someone who doesn't get representation can look at and say, that's me. As an autistic woman, I saw myself a lot in Naima and her struggles in school, and it was really cathartic to see so many things I went through put into words. It's so rare to see autistic characters that aren't the savant archetype, and Naima felt like a real person with realistic weaknesses and strengths. I particularly enjoyed the exploration of her and her mom's grief. I also loved that the story included Black, Latinx, and queer characters who weren't solely defined by their systemic struggles, but it also didn't ignore that those struggles do exist and were able to have interest and drama and joy. It was really refreshing to read, and it didn't feel like a checklist of representation like a lot of books tend to do. Anyway, that was one of the first reviews that I got for this book. And since then, I've had pretty good reviews, a lot of 4 and 5 stars. I think it's a really great book. I think it's really fun. And I think a lot of authors hope and wish and pray that their books go viral. Because I'm like, if I sell 10,000 copies of that book, it would literally change my life. And that's not even like bestseller status. That's just that's mid-list. Who are some booktubers with reading tastes similar to yours? Okay, this was a very hard one because I do follow quite a few booktubers, but like I don't think any of them have similar tastes to mine. Like I follow Dante because he does a lot of classic literature. And me and the classics, we got some beef. We got some history. We got some trauma between us. But I do really love hearing about him talk about the things that he enjoys in them. And sometimes it's like, maybe I should revisit the classics. We are not BFFs. But he does make me think maybe I should revisit. And then there's Lex Reads, who has a lot of good recs for urban fiction. So whenever I'm in the mood for like a good urban fiction book, that's where I'll go for that. And then there's Alana Estelle, who reads a lot of books that I will never ever read, but I just really love her channel. So like that's the hard part. It's like a lot of these people, I like their content. I like hearing them talk about books and things like that. But I would never spend my time reading the books that they do. Even Mari, who is doing this tag, I like to watch her read other books that I would never read. Yeah, I'm like, and sorry, I'm not strong like her. So I can't read a book that I know I'm gonna hate. I just don't want to waste my time reading something that I know I'm going to hate. I would rather spend that time reading something that makes me feral. So, but that is all I have. This was a very fun tag. I really liked it. I may try and do more tags like this in the future because I do think it is important to know the people that you're listening to and what their expectations are when it comes to books, what they enjoy, because you may expect and enjoy different things. And I think it's very important that everyone's on the same page. I do agree that I think it's most important that you develop your own personal taste, because it helps you to sift through those books that will be a waste of your time because they're not for you, right? And it helps you to go more towards the things that are for you. So I hope that you have enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments your top 3 books, the books that you go feral for that you wish everybody else knew about. I want to know about those because maybe I can add some to my TBR. Let's see. Okay, that's all I have. Bye, y'all.